So now that we have a nice vertical slice of our level, we're going to actually start creating some of our materials. And I think the first material I'm going to make is our base stage material here. So I'm just going to drag over here and I'm in the materials folder, and I'm just going to right click and I'm going to make a new material. Now, you can create whatever material you want first and create your own naming conventions, but I always personally like naming it capital M for material and then the object name. So base stage, let me capitalize that, base stage 01. And then I'm going to double click into it, and it's going to open up my material editor. So here we are in our material editor, and over here we have all of our final node points that we're going to plug everything into, and then we have a nice amount of space to work with. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide this over for a minute. I'm going to go to my textures folder, and I'm going to find all of the textures for our base stage. So here we go. And I'm just going to drag them in. There's our albedo, our ambient occlusion, metalness, normal map, and our roughness. Now, the material editor takes a little bit of time to be able to load your previews, so when you're changing stuff around, it might look like they're black, but just give it a second and they're going to compile and they're going to look all cool. And I'm also going to, here's where our material is going to be previewed. Right now it's just black because we don't have anything plugged in. I'm going to switch to a box so I have a bit of a better understanding of what the material is going to look like. And I'm going to plug my albedo map into our base color, and that's going to generate. There we go. And I'm going to plug my normal map in, because these ones are pretty straightforward. They're going to be what they are. And there's our normal map. And then here we have our ambient occlusion, which I'm going to plug into here. And our metalness is going to plug into our metallic node. So I'm going to plug it in right here. And when we plug it in, we have a pretty nice level of metal. You know, things that are metal, and the things that aren't. That's looking pretty cool, but we're going to add a bit of roughness. Now, if I take my roughness right here and just plug it straight in, what's going to happen is our material is going to look really, really bright. And the reason for that is that Unreal 4 reads the opposite colors for roughness, so that black is going to be less rough and white is going to be more rough. So what we're going to do is, I like to keep my roughness in the normal colors. It allows me to think easier. So I'm just going to come up to my little palette up here that has all these different nodes that we can drag in. And for some of our other materials, we're going to be doing that. But for right now, I'm going to look for a node that's going to invert my texture. So I'm just going to type 1 minus x. And this is called a 1 minus node, and it will create the opposite color. It'll invert it. So if I hit for a second, you can see that now it's all white with a little bit of black, which is what we want. So I'm just going to drag this and plug it into my roughness. And there we go. That looks nice, nice and rough. So I'm going to hit save, and this is going to compile our material. And if we go up to our materials folder, here's our material, and we can actually just drag it and place it on our objects. There we go. And we're also using it on our vertical separator here, and we're also using it on the girder up here. So I'm just going to grab that. And I want to make sure that's going to show all of those rivets up there. So that looks nice. And really quickly, if I just hit play, yeah, it's looking pretty cool. All right. Now the next material that I'm going to make is our back wall material over here, because that doesn't actually have any metal in it. So I'm going to right click and create a new material. And I'm going to name it m underscore back wall 01. And here is another material. It's going to move it over to the side for a second. And I'm going to drag in the maps that I need. So I'm just going to plug in my base color, or my albedo map, my normal map, my ambient occlusion. And I'm going to make this a plane so we can see it a little bit easier. So we have our nice normal map working and everything. But it feels a little odd. It feels a little plasticky. And the reason for that is that, well, one, we didn't tell the material if it is or metallic or not, and we also don't have a roughness or a specular. Now remember, we're only going to be using specular maps for materials that are not metallic. So I'm going to tell that this is not metallic, but I don't need to bring in an extra texture sample. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create something called a one constant, a shade of gray node that we're going to be able to plug in. And to create it, you hold 1 on your keyboard and left click. And in our material expression contrast down here, we can tell it can be 0, which is black, or 1, which is white. So there it is. But you can also say that it's 0.5, that it's gray. There you go. But I'm going to tell it, no, you're actually going to be black because this material is not metal. So I'm going to plug it in there. And then I'm going to plug my texture sample into my specular channel. And then if we actually take our specular map and plug it into our roughness channel, we're going to get some nice highlights that are going to sparkle along our wall. Makes it look like, it's kind of wet, which works for what we're doing. Yeah, so I'm going to save that. And once it's done saving, I'm going to close out my material editor. I'm going to go to my materials, and I'm just going to drop that on our back wall there. And then I'm going to hit play. I'm just going to take a look at how it's looking. Yeah, it looks nice. Now, you might have noticed that it says lighting needs to be rebuilt 82 unbuilt objects. And the reason for that is that we have all of our objects in here, but the lighting hasn't been calculated yet. And we're going to do that in a little bit. So right now, this is just like preview lighting. The lighting is going to get different. The shadows will be baked, and everything's going to look nice and cool. So I'm just going to escape out here. And the next thing I think I want to make is our lights, because they have some cool emissive stuff, which we'll get to talk about. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to make a new material, m_light 01, and double click to open it. And I'm going to grab all my light textures. So here is our albedo map, here is our emissive map, here is our metalness map, and here is our roughness map. So let me just plug all these guys in. Roughness. And our metallic. And again, we have to make sure that we invert our roughness. So let me just grab a 1- node, plug it in, plug it in. There we go. And now we also have an emissive map down here, and we can just drag this into our emissive channel. And I'm going to hit save, and it's going to compile our material. And close that out. And I'm just going to drag it, drop it there. And we're casting some really cool emissive map where it's going to kind of like glow a bit. So if I hit play, we can see that it's glowing. But I think there's a little bit more we can do with it. Right now, it's glowing, but it's not really glowing. So I'm going to escape out, and I'm going to open up our material. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply our light by a 1 constant so that we can make it brighter. So to do that, I'm going to create a 1 constant node and a multiply node. And I'm going to plug my nodes into the multiply node. And to make a multiply node, just hold down M on your keyboard and left click. And set my 1 constant value to something like 1.25. And we're going to see what this does. Maybe let's set it to 2 for right now. We might change this. We'll come back and edit it depending on what it looks like. Close out. And I'm going to hit play. Now it doesn't look like much has changed, but when we finish our lighting system, it's going to look way different. I'm actually going to come here and I'm going to set this to something not so bright. So I'm going to set this to like 1.25. All right. And I'm just going to turn off my level to just look at the unlit lighting. Now, you can see that our level without lighting looks really flat, and that's the point. We want most of our materials to be handled by the lights that are going to be in our world. So, you can see that we're getting some nice detailing along our metal because of the lights and because of the materials that we've used. Looks pretty cool. Alright, so we're getting pretty far already. Next time I think we're going to work on our center platform as well